Welcome everyone to the next webinar in our ThinkStep webinar series. I'm Emily Moore. I'm a sustainability practitioner at thinkstep-anz, and I'm really excited to be hosting today's webinar. We'll be joined by Jim Goddin, who's our head of circular economy, and also Andrea from Laminex. And we're going to learn about how you can bring proof of circularity into your EPDs. So here we go. Here's our wonderful speakers for today, and we'll move on to them and introduce them shortly. But yeah, really excited to have them both speak to you today about the work that we've done for Laminex. A little bit of Zoom housekeeping. So you are all in listen only mode. This is just to make sure that the audio quality is good for our recording. We'll be posting the webinar on our website afterwards, so you can access it there. If you have any questions for the Q&A panel at the end, please send them through the Q&A box. Rather than posting it in the chat function, it just makes it a little bit easier for us to moderate that way. Before we get started, I'd like to do a quick poll. So I've got 2 short questions for everyone just to get everyone thinking about circularity and EPDs. So I'm going to launch those now. You should see them come up on your screen in just a few moments. Okay, so question 1 is, how familiar are you with MCI? So maybe you've never heard of it before and you're just joining this webinar because you thought you didn't really know what MCI was, but you want to learn more about it. Maybe you don't really know what MCI stands for or what it means, but you've heard people talk about it. Maybe it seems to be a word that's cropping up a bit more and more. Maybe you're very well familiar with an MCI and you're already calculating it, or you're even including it in your EPDs. So yeah, there's a variety of ways that you could be using the MCI at the moment. Seems like there's a lot of people who haven't heard of MCI before, which is fair enough. I haven't really known about it for very long either, so that's fair enough. A lot of people are still sort of learning about what it means to quantify circularity. And there's a few people, who were familiar with it, but couldn't really break down what the letters stand for. So it's good to see that there are some who have calculated MCI for their products. And there are even some, fewer, but some who are include that in their EPD in the future. So that's fantastic. Cool. I will end this poll now. Thank you very much for participating, and I will launch another poll, which should be showing up for you in a moment. This is shifting the focus onto what the need that is driving, why do you need to start reporting on circularity of your products? So we've got a plethora of different reasons here. We've got Green Star or similar industry ratings, circular procurement requirements, regulations, such as those like in Australia, New Zealand, and also in Europe, any regional or national circular economy frameworks, or perhaps it's more to do with your own business targets, which seems to be the most popular option. Demand from your customers, which also seems to be something that's cropping up for quite a few people, and competition from other products as well. There's a few that are unsure, but you're just happy to learn, which is beautiful. Give that another couple of seconds. All right, I'll close that one there. Thank you as well for participating in that poll. So hopefully that gives everyone an idea of where everyone else is at. If you haven't heard of MCI before, you're not alone. And if you've got those driving factors that are pushing you more towards looking into your circularity for your products, then it's good to know that other people are thinking similarly as well. Cool. So with all that being said, I will let Jim take over the screen share and go into circularity and EPDs. Jim.
Thanks, Sam. Welcome to this session today. It's good to see that some of you haven't heard of MCI and EPDs before. So this first segment is for you, really, to give you a bit of an introduction to what the MCI is and how it's being incorporated. And then I'll hand over to Andrea, who has the more interesting part of our segment. So the MCI really evolved because of this comparability and aggregation problem. If you look at all the levers that we have for the circular economy, whether that's designing out materials or using regenerative materials, designing for durability or remanufacturing or recycling, all of those different ways of delivering circularity are measured differently. And that makes it very hard to compare different strategies and to combine them to understand what their combined impact is in terms of delivering circular economy objectives. So the MCI was really evolved as a way of delivering that comparability through a single metric. Now, circularity is also a way of influencing action. And if we look at things like recycling-based metrics, which is kind of the default when we talk about the circular economy a lot of the time, we have the challenge of being locked into a particular way of thinking. Now, if we just think about circularity in the perspective of recycling, then recycling is likely to be the only thing that we get. And there are a lot of other circular models that are just as relevant, and some of them even more circular than recycling is. So as we go up through that hierarchy, through remanufacturing, reuse, and avoidance and durability, we tend to get more circular, and we preserve more of the value and recover more of the environmental and economic value of those products as well. So trying to be more all-encompassing in terms of how we measure circularity is also beneficial in terms of encouraging us to include those other circular solutions as part of the landscape. Now, what the MCI does is it takes all of those different ways of delivering circularity and produces a single score, which is a percentage from 0 to 100%. 0 is fully linear, 100% is perfectly circular with no virgin materials used and no waste produced. And it provides you that single figure, which in this case is 65%, which is your circularity for this product. It also then breaks that down into how much of that score comes from decoupling from virgin materials. That's your material input component. How much of it comes from avoiding waste. So that's your material outputs. And how much of it comes from making your product last longer or being used more effectively, which is your use component. And obviously the bit that isn't accounted for is your circularity gap and the opportunity that you have to increase your circularity in the future. The important thing, though, with MCI is it keeps all of those solutions, whether it's reuse, remanufacturing, durability, recycling, bio-based materials, it keeps them all on the table, makes them directly comparable, and allows you to innovate and look at different solutions side by side. Now, the MCI predates some of the more recent ISO standards, but they are compatible. It is directly compatible with those standards and aligns very, very well. Part of the reason for that is it helped to inform the development of those standards. So I was involved in some of these standards and know that it was included as part of that landscape assessment. It's also been adopted by most of the major platforms, whether it's LCA or digital product passports. So you can find the MCI across multiple tools, and there are multiple ways that you can calculate it. It's designed to be used alongside other indicators. So LCA is a very good complement to the MCI. Now, the reason we're interested in the MCI and measuring circularity more generally is because of growing demand, both nationally and internationally. So there's a whole pile of regulatory drivers, and there are some there on screen. I'm not going to read them all out, as well as market and industry standards and national roadmaps. And I've highlighted in purple some of the ones that apply particularly to our main audience today in Australia and New Zealand. So things like Green Star Buildings version 1.1, which includes credits for measuring circularity, particularly using ISO 59020 compliant metrics like the MCI. Credits, B Corp certification has recently introduced requirements for considering circularity as well. And then we have the Australian Circular Economy Framework, which is something that we're also trying to align with. So the MCI is useful for all of these in terms of quantifying the circularity of products and also the circularity of projects, and is a way that we can help to deliver this. Now, why is it a good match to publish MCI within EPDs? Firstly, EPDs use a lot of the same data as the MCI, and deliberately so. The MCI was designed to use very similar data inputs that you would require for an LCA. So developing an MCI at the same time as an EPD actually minimizes cost and effort because we're touching a lot of the same data, we're using a lot of the same tools, and it just becomes a very simple add-on to developing an EPD. EPDs also follow product category rules, which enables us to keep the MCI scope aligned and comparable across different products in the same category. And within the EPD process, we have a verification system that already exists that we can piggyback on. So the MCI can be verified at the same time as the EPD in the absence of a individual scheme for verifying MCIs. We can also do standalone verification, but so far a lot of the verification has been through EPDs. So just a broad view in terms of where we're seeing the MCI published. So on the left in the dark blue, you'll see the EPDs that have been published with MCI figures. There's 182 products covered so far. And you can see the categories down the bottom there: steel, MDF, particle board, which we're talking today, asphalt and insulation have been covered. And there are quite a few others that I know of that are currently in the works and coming through at the moment. On the right, you'll see a bunch of self-published MCI figures that have been used in reports or on people's websites for different types of products. But the important thing here is that the materials and the products in this chart are very different. They deliver circularity through entirely different means, whether that's recycled content, end-of-life recovery, regenerative biological materials, modularity, and design for disassembly. These are all encompassed within these different products, but we're able to compare them side by side and to look at how the circularity varies from one product to the next. And importantly, there is a scale and a distribution within that. So not all products within one category are better than products in another category. It all depends on how that particular product's been designed and manufactured and how it's going to be used. So I'll finish up there, but if you want to get started with the MCI, there is a new MCI Pro tool launching this month, which is a really good way to start using the MCI. It gives you decision grade results that are designed as a sort of pre-verification step. You still need to get it verified. It includes things like the product circularity data sheet, again, which ties in with digital product passports in a way of standardizing your data so that it can be transferred. At the moment, there's a 20% early bird discount, and I'm sure Emily will provide the link in the Q&A or the chat in a moment. But by all means, check that out. It's a good way to get started and is useful for various people within your organization. And with that, I'll hand over to Andrea. I'll take us through how Laminex has applied the MCI within their products. Andrea.
Thanks, Jim. I'm now going to try and share my screen, so bear with me while I do that, and hopefully all will go well. Emily, if you can let me know that everything is up and Jim says yes, that's a good start.
That's great.
Wonderful. For anyone in the room who isn't familiar with Laminex, we're a leading Australian manufacturer of decorative surface materials. It's a 90-year-old business. It's a bit of a Vegemite type brand in the building products world. We mostly manufacture wood fibre panels, so MDF and particle board, as well as laminates, and we have a national footprint. So that's just an intro to Laminex for anyone who's not familiar with the brand. Now I'm in charge of the slides, so everyone can see the second slide, all working? Yep. So we went through a process of getting our EPDs last year. We published 7 of them, which was a big piece of work covering our wood fibre products. We decided to include MCI in all of the EPDs. We found the experience to be really very seamless when doing the EPD because we were able to leverage, as Jim said, the same data. So that was a very cost-effective process. It meant, in terms of our own resource allocation and in terms of getting the third-party verification, it just made sense. We've found, I guess, another added benefit we didn't see at the time, but a benefit of having an MCI in a document like an EPD was very helpful for supporting our eco-label submission. So we moved to GECA last year at the same time, and that really helped us with some of the criterion for product life cycle and stewardship. So I was asked to speak a little bit about our motivation for commissioning MCI as part of our EPDs. And when I thought about that, it was clear that we had a range of drivers. It wasn't all about competing with other products in the market. We certainly had an internal motivation or suggestion, I suppose, or encouragement from our parent company to include the MCI when we were doing EPDs. That helps our parent company with their targets for product and solution lifecycle and for circular economy. So that helped us to help them in that space. We also could see very clearly that the GBC was heading in the direction of circularity and, I guess, database circularity. We could see from various documents and from conversations with them that they were planning on embedding circularity metrics into Green Star buildings, fit outs and the products tool. And for us, the fit outs tool is certainly one that we've been watching the development of, and we wanted to make sure that we were set up and in a position to be able to help our customers with their Green Star submissions. And we were also getting the feeling that GBCA was sort of setting up the industry to move beyond just thinking about recycling as the answer for circularity. So again, that sort of informed our thinking. And lots of conversations with our customers. It was clear to us that while customers are looking absolutely really, keen to specify based on circularity, there just wasn't a consensus, or there isn't a consensus in the market on what that is or how to make that assessment. So we really wanted to help our customers to be able to make those decisions based on, I guess, an apples and apples type of framework rather than just on the text that might be on a flyer or on a website. So by including the MCI in our EPDs, we saw the EPDs as a credible document and LCA data as very credible data. And that's given us the ability to have, I guess, deeper conversations that we might not otherwise have had. Okay. So in thinking about how MCI may impact our product design or the way we communicate in the marketplace, we really felt that the days of broad unsupported claims that a product is circular are pretty much over. I think the market is quite discerning. They have a keen eye for greenwash now. And the ACCC has demonstrated that sustainability claims are focus of their future compliance program. So it's important that we felt that it was important that if you were going to speak about circularity, you needed to do that from a place of honesty and credibility. We also were aware that ISO 14021 was under review. That's the standard about self-declared environmental claims. And we sort of anticipate that with that will be a tightening of self-declared environmental claims. And we expect to see eco labels aligning with the tightening of these standards and obviously the other standards that are rolling out, such as the circularity ones that Jim showed us a bit earlier on. So we really feel, or our decision, we felt that the circularity standards and tools like MCI will enable us to have more meaningful conversations with our customers around circularity. And, I guess while the starting point for those might well be the actual MCI score, it was a conversation starter, or it opened up that opportunity for us to have those conversations. I don't know how much time I have. I really could dive deeply into the sorts of conversations we could have. I guess I'll mention briefly that, the sorts of things that we can now talk about, having had that conversation opener of here's our MCI score, are the things that Jim mentioned earlier too. Our products, our fibre board products are made from timber, so the ultimate renewable. That's probably something that people tend to overlook when they look at one of our products, and that the products are made at least partially from residue from plantation harvesting and sawmill processes. So when the MCI is calculated, and as Jim explained, there are the components of that. When they look at the number next to the inputs, we can start to have those conversations about what's actually in our product. Also, the aspect of MCI that speaks to durability. Particularly our MDF product is extremely durable, so it can lend itself to reuse or disassembly and refurbishment. And these are really important conversations to have with our designer customers and our builders, because the decisions that they make in the end are very important for a better circular outcome. Also, conversations about whether to specify particle board or MDF in parts of the market that might consider recycling to be the be all and end all of circularity might seem a little bit confusing or confronting, that particle board and MDF score reasonably similarly in the MCI. So it sort of opens up the conversations about whether it's the best decision to maybe substitute one board out for another. When you have that circularity data or result there, you can sort of start that conversation from a place of credibility. And also, and we won't dive deeply into it because it's probably potentially contentious, but also how does bioenergy play in the story of circularity for products like our MDF, for example, that just doesn't have a recycling pathway at the moment. So essentially the MCI provides us with a tool to benchmark where we're at now and to think about how we can improve and to measure that improvement as we move forward. And it's also, and this is important for any business in the economic circumstances of today, you need to be able to demonstrate, that it's worth investing in these, in better operations or in new technologies and so on. So it's a good tool to communicate with our parent company about the value of innovation in the circularity space and investment in operations. Oops, is that my last slide? It is. So
yeah,
I raced through that. So look, in the end, the takeaways, if I reflect on the takeaways from that experience, I would recommend it for all of the many reasons that I've just sort of walked you through. If you're doing an EPD, it's quick, it's painless, and it's the cheapest way to sort of, get the MCI into play for you. If you want to do it after the fact, it's additional expense and additional time and additional resources within your own organisation. So highly recommended from myself for Laminex.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrea. Alrighty. Well, that brings us to our Q&A now that we've heard from both Jim and Andrea. We've got a few questions in the chat already, which is awesome. I'll go through those now. But yeah, if anyone else has got some questions, please post them in the chat and we'll see what we can answer before the end of the webinar. So our first question here, and this may be a question for you, Jim, is there a database where all the MCIs, including in EPDs and self-published, are stored for easy access?
Yeah, the short answer to that is no, and not one that includes the self-published results as well, because those tend to be scattered across different organisations' websites. We know of them because we go trawling, looking for where the MCI is being used by different product types. For EPDs, it's a lot easier, particularly with EPD Australasia. They have a tag on most of their EPDs. So you can go to the EPD Australasia website and search for MCI, and it will bring up all of the EPDs that have MCI published. So the graph I showed earlier is essentially harvested from those EPDs and the results that have been published within those. Sometimes you'll find EPDs will have just one MCI published. Sometimes there will be several. It just depends on how the EPD's been structured. But hopefully we'll see greater visibility of MCI as we go forward. And obviously having a verified result is much safer than publishing your own and not having any substantiation behind it.
Awesome. Thank you, Jim. And I think there's a follow-up question sort of from that as well, I think, or maybe more of a statement saying that it would be good to have a list of products with their EPD numbers and websites, and then the people who are interested in that information can go off individually and find that information themselves. But yeah, it seems like at the moment it is kind of a choose your own adventure rather than having it all laid out neatly. Maybe one day that will change.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You might be able to do something about that.
Maybe. Who knows? We've got another question as well, and this is there a good benchmark for a good MCI? I'll direct this one to you as well, Jim. I imagine that would depend on the product in general. For example, would 65% be a best practice benchmark? How would that benchmarking sort of work?
This is a question that comes up an awful lot. So yeah, how good is good? I think essentially, unless you're at 100%, there's always room for improvement. I guess the main thing is from two different perspectives. You have your own internal perspective on your MCI. So MCI is very useful, as Andrea was saying, in terms of understanding how you can influence your results and where the potential blocks or barriers are to improving your circularity further. Is the challenge where you're getting materials from, or is the challenge where your materials are going to? Are there opportunities to make your product last longer? These are questions that you can answer and get to a direction on fairly quickly using the MCI. When it comes to published figures, it's a question of how you compare against other solutions on the marketplace, and is your product more likely to be selected as part of a procurement process because your MCI is higher or lower than another product? How does your circularity compare with your embodied carbon or your cost? So there's a smorgasbord of different metrics that your product could be selected on. MCI is just one of them. So you always want to adopt that mindset of continuous improvement and look at where you are today, and your MCI on your product is a way of publishing that what your circularity is, but also a way of communicating that where you're going next, and to be able to talk about that journey. So that is less about what the absolute score is and more about the fact that you know what it is and you know what you're going to do next.
Awesome.
Andrea, would you have a different perspective on that, or?
No, I think in a way the same thinking around EPDs is it's difficult to directly compare one result with another. It's the bigger story, and I guess the verifying that and understanding what it means for the project that you might be specifying that product on.
Sweet. Yeah, no, very, very good answers. Thank you both. I think we've got time for one more. And Jim, I think this may be a question for you as well, but if Andrea, you want to jump in as well? Feel free. Yeah, no, thank you.
Let the expert answer the questions.
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb. So we've got a question here about what to do in the absence of an EPD. Can green tag certifications also be used? I assume that's in relation to MCI rather than life cycle assessment more so, but Jim, I'll hand that over to you.
Yeah, well, it would actually be good to get Andrea's perspective on this. I'm kind of less familiar with green tag, but from an MCI perspective, it doesn't really matter too much where the MCI is. But Andrea, what's your stance?
We do have green tag EPDs for our laminate products, and they don't have MCI in them. It's obviously a different program, so it's not to say that if you approached the team at green tag, if they had the ability and internal processes and so on and verifiers to go through that process, as Jim said, I assume it could be done. It's just not part of their program at the moment.
Yeah, but I guess that maybe also ties in with the last question I can see on the screen as well, if we can tackle that one at the same time.
Yep.
Whether the MCI is attached to the EPD. So the MCI at the moment is included as additional information in the EPD. So there's nothing to stop the MCI from being included as additional information in other certification schemes. So yeah, as far as the MCI is concerned, it can be included anywhere you like or as a standalone report, which is something we also offer. But I think the important thing is that it's done on a comparable basis, and that alignment with product category rules. So you're assessing the same system within the same boundaries, and taking the EPD or the green tag scheme and using alongside that the guidance from the ISO 59020 standard is really important to make sure that the results are directly comparable, because otherwise we'll end up in a mess where we have lots of different. We've just
gone through the point of getting things aligned to one sort of methodology. That the last thing anyone would want to see is somehow or other for that to go back out and have lack of clarity in this space.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's one of the benefits of going down the EPD route for the MCI, is that we're already making use of that existing framework and the rules that have already been set to make sure that what we're doing is comparable.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, that is all of our questions, I think. So thank you to both of you for answering those so elegantly. I will just lead us to the slides again so that we can wrap up. So once again, thank you, Andrea and Jim, for presenting today's webinar. I'm sure a lot of people who started the webinar not really understanding what MCI is, hopefully they would answer quite differently to the poll if we were to run it again now, and they have a better understanding of what it is and why it's important, and how you can incorporate that into your EPDs. A few things coming up on the ThinkStep side. So we have a webinar with Tetra Pak in April, which is also looking at LCA. Definitely not one to miss if you're an LCA fan. We've also got the MCI Pro launch happening soon. As Jim was alluding to before, we've been working behind the scenes to develop an improved way of calculating your MCI. So if that's a calculator that you would be interested in, watch this space. We will also have some of us at the Transform conference in Sydney coming up very soon. So if you're intending on going to that, please come and say hello. And we also have Disclosure Kit coming up, which is a way for doing your climate-related reporting. So not quite related to EPD and MCI, but if that's something you're interested in, that's up and coming for us as well. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you once again to our wonderful hosts, and to everyone else, have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks.
We have many more webinar replays on a whole host of sustainability topics. You can check them out on our website and our YouTube channel.